Hello everyone, and welcome back to IRL Lore with me, the Segovax. Today, we will be reading Inanna's Descent to the Underworld. I'll be switching back and forth between a couple of translations, FYI, so let's just jump in. From the great heaven she set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven the goddess set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven Inanna set her mind on the great below. The mistress abandoned heaven, abandoned earth, and descended to the underworld. It reiterates. So far, all we are given is a reiteration of the title, several reiterations, that this is a story of Ishtar going to the underworld. But otherwise, we're given next to nothing to go on as far as where to put this story in the timeline. Or, I suppose, there's also a reference to the importance of a patron deity in managing affairs, and the consequences of dereliction, with the references to her abandonment. In the next lines, however, we get a greater clue that this likely occurred during Inanna's queenship over heaven and earth, the period where she seemed to hold the Enlil power, which lasted for much of the later period of Sumerian civilization, with her cult worship continuing long after the god's departure, attesting to her influence. That clue being the list of all the stations her absence left abandoned. In the interest of fullness of detail, I will recite them now, omitting repetitive lines that provide no new information. She abandoned the office of En, she abandoned the office of Lagar, and descended to the underworld. She abandoned the Iana in Unug, she abandoned the Imukkalama in Bad Tibera, the Giguna in Zabalam, the Ikara in Adab, the Baragdurjara in Nibru, the Hursaj Kalama in Kish, the Ulmak in Akkad, the Ibgal in Umma, the Dilmuna in Urim, the Amak Kug in Kisiga, the Ekdam Kug in Jirsu, the Sigmeke Du in Isin, the Anzagar in Akkak, the Nijinjar Kug in Kurapag, or I guess maybe Shurapag. She abandoned the Kaghula in Kazalu, and descended to the underworld. Woof. She took the 7 divine powers. She collected the divine powers and grasped them in her hand. With the good divine powers she went on her way. She put a turban, headgear for the open country, on her head. She took a wig for her forehead. She hung small lapis lazuli beads around her neck. Okay, I'm going to jump in here to remind you what Sumerian is. A highly contextual written language, by which I mean the character's meaning is dependent on the ones around them. Ki/gi, for example, can have entirely different semantic baggage as a component of a word than it would have standing on its own. Now consider what is being described about Inanna suiting up here, and what semantic baggage might be included for an audience familiar with these gods, has likely seen them or their handiwork before. What significant context would now be lost to us? Line 20. She placed the twin egg-shaped beads on her breast. She covered her body with the pala dress, the garment of ladyship. She placed mascara, which is called, quote, "Let a man come, let him come," on her eyes. She pulled the pectoral, which is called "Come, man, come," over her breast. She placed a golden ring on her hand. She held the lapis lazuli measuring rod and measuring line in her hand. Inanna traveled towards the underworld. Her minister, Ninkubura, traveled behind her. Holy Inanna said to Ninkubura, "Come, my faithful minister of Iana, my minister who speaks fair words, my escort who speaks trustworthy words. I am going to give you instructions. My instructions must be followed. I am going to say something to you. It must be observed. On this day I will descend to the underworld. When I have arrived in the underworld, make a lament for me on the ruin mounds. Beat the drum for me in the sanctuary. Make the rounds of the houses of the gods for me. Lacerate your eyes for me. Lacerate your nose for me. Lacerate your ears for me, in public. In private, lacerate your buttocks for me. Like a pauper, clothe yourself in a single garment, and all alone set your foot in the Ikur, the house of Enlil. When you have entered the Ikur, the house of Enlil, lament before Enlil. Father Enlil, don't let anyone kill your daughter in the underworld. Don't let your precious metal be alloyed there with the dirt of the underworld. Don't let your precious precious lapis lazuli be split there with the mason's stone. Don't let your boxwood be chopped up there with the carpenter's wood. Don't let young Lady Inanna be killed in the underworld. If Enlil does not help you in this matter, go to Urim, in the Imud Kura at Urim. When you have entered the Kishnu Jal, the house of Nana, lament before Nana. Father Nana, don't let... okay, now it repeats verbatim that don't let them kill. And if Nana does not help you in this matter, go to Eridug. In Eridug, when you have entered the house of Anki, lament before Anki. Father Anki, don't let anyone... Yeah, repeats that formula again, picking up again at line 65. Father Anki, the Lord of great wisdom, knows about the life-giving plant and the life-giving water. He is the one who will restore me to life. When Inanna traveled on towards the underworld, her minister Ninkubura traveled on behind her. She said to her minister Ninkubura, "Go now, my Ninkubura, and pay attention. Don't neglect the instructions I gave you." So Inanna seems to expect trouble, yet persists anyway. At this point, we encounter an interesting difference, where this translation says something much more tame. The cuneiform Parallels translation has Inanna threatening to cause a Romero-style zombie apocalypse if not allowed entry. Page is on screen now. Based. But also, to me at least, somehow incredibly concerning to see in an enigmatic text from thousands of years ago. Okay, back to this version. When Inanna arrived at the palace Ganzer, she pushed aggressively on the door of the underworld. She shouted aggressively at the gate of the underworld. "Open up, doorman, open up! Open up, Nettie! Open up! I am all alone and I want to come in." Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, answered holy Inanna.
"Who are you?"
"I am Inanna, going to the east."
"If you are Inanna going to the east, why have you traveled to the land of no return? How did you set your heart on the road whose traveler never returns?"
Holy Inanna answered him, "Because Lord Gugalana, the husband of my elder sister, Holy Ereshkigal, has died. In order to have his funeral rites observed, she offers generous libations at his wake. That is the reason." So now we have Inanna's reason for going revealed to us. The funeral of Gugalana, whose name means Bull of Heaven, and is possibly the very same flying, horned, scorpion-shaped combat vehicle / Galu demon thing slain by Enkidu and Gilgamesh in the latter's epic. I'm not sure if getting drunk at his wake is Inanna's true motivation. She's kind of the one who got him killed in the first place. Her boyfriends do that a lot. Get killed, I mean. In any case, here she is, walking straight into hostile territory. Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, answered holy Inanna.
"Stay here, Inanna. I will speak to my mistress. I will speak to my mistress Ereshkigal, and tell her what you have said."
Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, entered the house of his mistress Ereshkigal and said,
"My mistress, there is a lone girl outside. It is Inanna, your sister, and she has arrived at the palace Ganzer. She pushed aggressively on the door of the underworld. She shouted aggressively at the gate of the underworld. She has abandoned Diada and has descended to the underworld. She has taken the 7 divine powers she had collected the..." Yeah, so he just repeats what she's done. She put on a turban, headgear for the open country, placed the egg-shaped, yeah. When she heard that, picking up again at line 114, when she heard this, Ereshkigal slapped one side of her thigh. She bit her lip and took the words to heart. She said to Nettie, her chief doorman, "Come, Nettie, my chief doorman of the underworld. Don't neglect the instructions I will give you. Let the 7 gates of the underworld be bolted. Then let each door of the palace Ganzer be opened separately. As for her, after she has entered and crouched down and had her clothes removed, they will be carried away." Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, paid attention to the instructions of his mistress. He bolted the 7 gates of the underworld. Then he opened each of the doors of the palace Ganzer separately. He said to holy Inanna, "Come on, Inanna, and enter."
And when Inanna entered, the turban, headgear for the open country, was removed from her head. "What is this?"
"Be satisfied, Inanna. A divine power of the underworld has been fulfilled. Inanna, you must not open your mouth against the rights of the underworld."
So, Ereshkigal tells her bouncer Nettie to remove Inanna's accessory, likely for some nefarious purpose, and on doing so, Inanna is troubled by their loss, seemingly further reinforcing that these accessories have more than simply aesthetic significance.
At this point, it repeats the formula 6 more times for each gate of the underworld, losing the lapis beads at her neck, the twin egg beads from her breast, the pectoral, the golden ring, the measuring rod and line, and the paladress were all removed, being told to not open her mouth against the rites of the underworld each time. Then, Ereshkigal's plan comes to fruition, picking up again at line 164. After she had crouched down and had her clothes removed, they were carried away. Then she made her sister Ereshkigal rise from her throne, and instead she sat on her throne. The Anuna, the 7 judges, rendered their decision against her. They looked at her. It was the look of death. They spoke to her. It was the speech of anger. They shouted at her. It was the shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. After 3 days and 3 nights had passed, her minister Ninkubura, her minister who speaks fair words, her escort who speaks trustworthy words, carried out the instructions of her mistress, did not forget her orders, she did not neglect her instructions. She made a lament for her in the ruined houses. She beat the drum for her in the sanctuaries. She made the rounds of the houses of the gods for her. She lacerated her eyes for her. She lacerated her nose. In private, she lacerated her buttocks for her. Like a pauper, she clothed herself in a single garment, and all alone she set foot in the Ekur, the house of Enlil. When she had entered Ekur, the house of Enlil, she lamented before Enlil. Father Enlil, don't let anyone kill your daughter in the underworld. Yeah, so at that point, it relayed, the don't let anyone kill formula verbatim. Enlil says, my daughter craved the great heaven, and she craved the great below as well. The divine powers of the underworld are divine powers which should not be craved, for whoever gets them must remain in the underworld. Who, having got to that place, could then expect to come up again? Interesting. Enlil seems to disapprove of Inanna's power-seeking behavior. Thus Enlil did not help in this matter, so she went to Urim, the Imudkura, at Urim. When she had entered the Ikishnujal, the house of Nanna, she lamented before Nanna. It here repeats the formula beseeching to not let Inanna perish. Nanna then repeats the formula of denial, same as Enlil, citing the same reasoning for not helping. Thus Father Nanna, picking up again at line 209, thus Father Nanna did not help her in this matter, so she went to Eridu. In Eridu, when she entered the house of Enki, she lamented before Enki. Ninkubura again repeats the formula, begging for help. Then Father Enki answered Ninkubura, what has my daughter done? She has me worried. What has Inanna done? She has me worried. What has the mistress of all the lands done? She has me worried. What has the Hierodule of Anu done? She has me worried. Thus, Father Enki helped her in this matter. He removed some dirt from the tip of his fingernail and created the Kurjara. He removed some dirt from the tip of his other fingernail and created the Galatura. To the Kurjara he gave the life-giving plant. To the Galatura he gave the life-giving water. And so, using dirt from under his fingernail, Enki makes Kurjara and Galatur, Galu demons, and kinda like the archetypal temple helper variety, what we would recognize as greys. When you see depictions or little figurines of long-faced with large eyes and vaguely reptilian, noseless aspects, this is who you are seeing depictions of. These 2 purpose-built enforcers sent to retrieve Inanna from the lower world. Consider, next, line 226. Then Father Enki spoke out to the Galatur and the Kurjara. One of you sprinkle the life-giving plant over her, and the other the life-giving water. Go, and direct your steps to the underworld. Flit past the door like flies. Slip through the door pivots like phantoms. The mother who gave birth, Ereshkigal, on account of her children, is lying there. Her holy shoulders are not covered by a linen cloth. Her breasts are not full like a Kagan vessel. Her nails are like a pickaxe upon her. The hair on her head is bunched up as if it were leeks. So this is interesting. It may be making reference to certain abilities that Galu demons have, such as to shapeshift or become a gas. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but there may be a reason that the Galu demons are not affected by the powers of the underworld the same way that the truly living gods are. Anyhow, back to the text. When she says, "O my heart," you are to say, "You are troubled, mistress, O your heart." When she says, "O my liver," you are to say,
"You are troubled, our mistress, O your liver." She will then ask, "Who are you?" "Speaking to you from my heart to your heart, from my liver to your liver. If you are gods, let me talk with you. If you are mortals, may a destiny be decreed for you. Make her swear this by heaven and earth." One-line fragmentary. "They will offer you a river full of water. Don't accept it. They will offer you a field with its grain. Don't accept it. But say to her, 'Give us the corpse hanging on the hook.' She will answer, 'That is the corpse of your queen.' Say to her, 'Whether it is that of our king, whether it is that of our queen, give it to us.' She will give you the corpse hanging on the hook. One of you sprinkle on it the life-giving plant, and the other the life-giving water. Thus let Inanna arise." The Galater and the Kurjara paid attention to the instructions of Anki. They flitted through the door like flies. They slipped through the door pivots like phantoms. The mother who gave birth, Ereshkigal, because of her children, was lying there. Her holy shoulders were not covered by a linen cloth. Her breasts were not full like a Kagan vessel. Her nails were like a pickaxe upon her. The hair on her head was bunched up as if it were leeks. As you can see by the repetition there, it's about to repeat that Kurjara and Galater do exactly what Ea advised them to. Picking up around line 280. "Whether it is that of our king or that of our queen, give it to us." They were given the corpse hanging on the hook. One of them sprinkled on it the life-giving plant, and the other the life-giving water, and thus Inanna arose. Ereshkigal said to the Galatura and the Kurjara, "Bring your queen. Lacuna, your Lacuna has been seized." Inanna, because of Anki's instructions, was about to ascend from the underworld. But as Inanna was about to ascend from the underworld, the Anuna seized her. "Who has ever ascended from the underworld, has ascended unscathed from the underworld. If Inanna is to ascend from the underworld, let her provide a substitute for herself." So when Inanna left the underworld, the one in front of her, though not a minister, held a scepter in his hand. The one behind her, though not an escort, carried a mace at his hip, while the small demons, like a reed enclosure, and the big demons, like the reeds of a fence, restrained her on all sides. Those who accompanied her, those who accompanied Inanna, know no food, know no drink, eat no flower offering, and drink no libation. They accept no pleasant gifts. They never enjoy the pleasures of the marital embrace, never have any sweet children to kiss. They tear away the wife from a man's embrace. They snatch the son from a man's knee. They make the bride leave the house of her father-in-law. They take the wife away from the man's embrace. They take away the child hanging on a wet nurse's breast. They crush no bitter garlic. They eat no fish. They eat no leeks. They, it was, who accompanied Inanna. Now, I'm not sure what exactly is being described in the confrontation there. Perhaps Anki was able to use his healing powers to aid Ereshkigal in some way, making her amenable to releasing Inanna. Whatever the case, we next see a more in-depth description of Galu demons than we've seen so far, which highlights some of their most interesting attributes. Do not know a lover's embrace, never have children. The fact they are sexless and do not reproduce the way humans do is mentioned fairly commonly alongside the Galu, as it is here, as well as their tirelessness and lack of a need for sustenance. We are both servants of the lofty ones, it seems, but they aren't really alive in the same way we are. As a kid, I always pictured them as robots, but on seeing depictions of Kurjara and Galater, realizing they could be any shape, and noticing the commonality of these traits across many different shaped monsters, I started thinking of them more as something like manufactured pseudo-living cells that could be formed into different shaped colony organisms depending on your need. This would seem to fit with the archaic Arabic word kholo, of the same etymological root, referencing an extremely fine clay powder, along with the clay golem of Jewish myth, with its phonetic and conceptual similarities to the Galu. So, how do they remain tireless without eating or drinking? Purely speculating here, but maybe some kind of hyperspatially entangled mitochondria drinking fourth-dimensional energy the way a chloroplast drinks sunlight? I don't know, but it's fun to think about. Then there's the strange reference to their not handling garlic or leeks, especially juxtaposed with their deadliness. Like a vampire?
pale, pseudo-living creatures that can turn into other stuff, like a bunch of bats, to avoid detection or capture. And then I get to thinking about how many cultures' folklore across the world contain cryptids that can change shape. And if one of them is a shapeshifter, then couldn't this one conceivably be all the other cryptids too? Assuming you're not seeing them together in the same room at the same time, at least? Draugr, yokai, fae, jinni, wherever you look, it all seems to be describing the same thing. I have neither the time nor the ability to list all the various names across all the different cultures that have something that meets this description in their folklore, so drop yours in the comments. And there's also a very common aspect of their causing paralysis with fear, ancient descriptions of those encountering Galu losing their courage, something that is also frequently mentioned in cryptid encounters in modern times, I think because both are examples of Galu demons, and a certain perceptual impact they have. That, or they simply look so deliberately traumatizing that it serves a tactical purpose, demoralizing your opponent, like Childs hesitating to torch the dog thing in that classic movie. Moving on. Line 306. After Inanna had ascended from the underworld, Ninkubura threw herself at her feet at the door of the Ganser. She had sat in the dust and clothed herself in a filthy garment. The demon said to holy Inanna, "Inanna, proceed to your city. We will take her back." Holy Inanna answered the demons, "This is my minister of fair words, my escort of trustworthy words. She did not forget my instructions. She did not neglect the orders I gave her. She made a lament for me on the ruin mounds." Lists everything she did. Directed her steps to Enlil. Directed her steps to Nanna. What before Anki? Let us go on to the Sigkur Kaga in Umma. At the Sigkur Kaga in Umma, Kara, in his own city, threw himself at her feet. He had sat in the dust and dressed himself in a filthy garment. The demon said to holy Inanna, "Inanna, proceed to your city. We will take him back." Holy Inanna answered the demons, "Kara is my singer, my manicurist, and my hairdresser. How could I turn him over to you? Let us go on. Let us go to the Imuk-Kalama in Bad Tibra." So, I guess she won't give up her gay best friend either. The formula is repeated for Lulal in Bad Tibra, apparently her bodyguard. She won't hand him over. "Let us go on to the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba." Line 348. They followed her to the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba. There was Dumuzi, clothed in magnificent garment and seated magnificently on a throne. The demons seized him there by his thighs. The 7 of them poured the milk from his churns. The 7 of them shook their heads like lacuna. They would not let the shepherd play the pipe and flute before her. She looked at him. It was the look of death. She spoke to him. It was the speech of anger. She shouted at him. It was the shout of heavy guilt. "How much longer? Take him away." Holy Inanna gave Dumuzi the shepherd into their hands. Now here we see related some details of the death of Dumuzi. And then Inanna will later lament what she decided on and ensured would happen. Maybe next she can buy some pants with no pockets and then complain about it like it's someone else's fault. I'm sure some nebulous, nefarious patriarchy mind-controlled her into buying them. Truly, nothing ever changes. Anyways, there are several accounts with some variation between them. However, the major points of similarity involve Dumuzi being seized, and in the course of his resisting arrest, is slain. Inanna and Marduk are variously blamed for this, but the preponderance seems to focus more on Marduk, and he does appear to be the one who was punished for his involvement. However, this text clearly highlights Inanna's blame, which is echoed by Gilgamesh in his epic, presenting a continuity problem with this, seeming to take place after those events, yet Gilgamesh was able to reference them as if it preceded him. Could be a telephone game issue inserted by ancient transcribers. Could be some kind of Cthulian dreamtime where cause and effect just don't really play in. Could be simply myth for ritual purposes, created by some cavemen writing sci-fi stories this inexplicably good and coincidentally in agreement with others writing virtually the same tales from across impossible gulfs of time and distance, but that last one seems a little bit too ridiculous to seriously consider. Line 359. Those who had accompanied her, who had come for Dumuzi, no food, no drink. Okay, yeah, it describes the Galu demons again. Line 368. Dumuzi let out a wail and turned very pale. The lad raised his hands to heaven, to Utu. Utu, you are my brother-in-law. I am your relation by marriage. I brought you butter to your mother's house. I brought you milk to Ningal's house. Turn my hands into a snake's hands, and turn my feet into a snake's feet, so I can escape the demons. Let them not keep hold of me. Utu accepted his tears. The demons could not keep hold of Dumuzi. Utu turned Dumuzi's hands into snake's hands. He turns his feet into snake's feet. Dumuzi escaped his demons. Like a Sajkal snake, he, Lacuna. They seized Lacuna. Holy Inanna, Lacuna, her heart. Holy Inanna wept bitterly for her husband. 4 lines fragmentary. She tore at her hair like esparto grass. She ripped it out like esparto grass. Your wives who lie in your men's embrace, where is my precious husband? You children who lie in your men's embrace, where is my precious child? Where is my man? Where Lacuna? Where is my man? Where Lacuna? Inanna, once lamenting the evil fate she chose for Dumuzi, now laments even harder his escaping said fate, threatening her with the consequences of her own actions, which is like kryptonite to females, of all eras. A fly spoke to Inanna. Line 394. A fly spoke to Inanna. If I show you where your man is, what will be my reward? Holy Inanna answered the fly. If you show me where my man is, I will give you this gift. I will cover Lacuna. The fly helped Holy Inanna. The young lady Inanna decreed the destiny of the fly. In the beer house and the tavern, may there Lacuna for you. You will live like the sons of the wise. Now Inanna decreed this fate, and thus it came to be. So a fly speaks to Inanna, offering to sell out Dumuzi in exchange for certain considerations. Could this be Marduk, or his son Nabu? Could all three perhaps be the same Belili that Inanna blames for Dumuzi's death, and who she swears to kill in the Inanna and Belili text, a text which will be cited more fully as evidence in another video. I swear I wrote the above bit before thinking to check on this, but going and looking through cuneiform parallels, which contains a more truncated version of this text, at the end of that text they make explicit mention of Belili. I'm not sure if it relates, though. The line numbering is wrong, for one thing. They could be looking at a different version for their translation. But perhaps there is some confusion here over a double entendre about a barfly, which our version here picked up on, missing the literal meaning, while it seems in cuneiform parallels they got the literal meaning, but missed the barfly joke. Lacuna was weeping. She came up to the sister and Lacuna by the hand. You for half the year and your sister for half the year. When you are demanded on that day, you will stay. When your sister is demanded, on that day you will be released. Thus, Holy Inanna gave Dumuzi as a substitute. Lacuna. Holy Ereshkigal, sweet is your praise. And so there it is, Inanna's descent to the underworld in full. At the end we see some elements that seem like they could have ended up becoming the Greek story of Persephone and Hades via the telephone game, probably as Levantine and Anatolian traders and settlers spread out west across the Mediterranean. But other than that, I don't really have much else to add. Lots of interesting stuff, but especially the detailed description of Galu demons. Them and the flying vehicles are some of the most striking elements of these stories, in my opinion. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and go over and support me on Patreon or at my website, churchoftransphobia.com. Peace.